In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, March 14th, here in South Korea. Professors of medicine in colleges across the country are poised to hold a virtual meeting later this evening to discuss their future course of action as the government calls against their plans to stand behind protesting junior doctors. On the trade front, South Korea's ICT exports surged over 29% on year in February for the fourth month in a row to post more than $16 billion, bolstered by strong shipments of semiconductors. And lawmakers at the European Parliament have set a global standard by becoming the first to adopt an AI Act that seeks to safeguard public interests while promoting productive and sustainable innovations in the field of artificial intelligence. The fate of Korea's healthcare sector remains uncertain as the academic medical arena appears poised to place its weight behind protesting junior doctors despite government calls for their return. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
Professors at 19 medical schools across the country are determining whether to collectively hand in their resignations. They have said they will decide by Friday. Medical professors at Seoul National University, one of the main medical schools in South Korea, have already given notification that they will submit their resignation letters by March 18th if the government cannot find a reasonable solution. The Medical Professors Association of Korea will hold an online meeting at 8 p.m. on Thursday ahead of the decision. The professors insist that, as well as protecting patients, as teachers, they should protect their junior doctors and medical students from legal action by the government.
Professors only exist because of students. Hence, we are considering voluntary resignations and urge the government to change its stance in resolving this issue.
The government is making efforts to stop the resignations of medical school professors, but has also made it clear that they could be subject to a maintenance order for treatment under medical law, as the professors are doctors themselves. The Health Ministry said on Thursday that medical professors should follow their duties.
We ask medical school professors to save patients' lives within their professional, ethical, and legal duties. Reducing numbers of doctors in the past due to fiscal pressures, when we should have been increasing them, has made the current reform more challenging. The government will complete healthcare reform to safeguard lives and health, avoiding past mistakes.
Meanwhile, severely ill patients are pleading with medical professors not to resign. The Korea Federation of Severe Diseases stated on Wednesday that the professors should be on the side of the patients and persuade the junior doctors who have left the field to return so that patients can be treated without missing the golden time. The Federation has urged that the government and the medical community find a way to break the deadlock, which is putting patients' lives at stake. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
On the trade front, Korea's ICT exports surged over 29% on year in February to log more than $16 billion, bolstered by strong shipments of semiconductors. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has more.
A strong chip performance was once again behind the increase in South Korea's tech exports. Data released by the Trade Ministry on Thursday shows that ICT exports in February rose 29.1% on year to a little over $16.5 billion. This marks the fourth consecutive month that the nation's ICT exports recorded an on-year increase, and it's the second straight month that exports increased by double digits. The ministry attributed the growth mostly to a robust performance in the chip sector. Semiconductor exports last month surged nearly 63% on year, recording growth in the double digits for 4 straight months. Memory chip exports were especially high, increasing by triple digits on the back of increased demand for high value-added products such as TVs and laptops. As for other tech exports, shipments of displays climbed more than 18% on year, as both OLED and LCD panel exports were up. And computer shipments also rose for the second consecutive month after entering positive territory for the first time in 19 months in January. But the mobile sector as a whole saw its exports tumble more than 21%, despite the release of new smartphones such as the Samsung Galaxy S24 series, due to a weakened global demand for mobile phone parts. By country, South Korea's exports to China, the nation's biggest destination for ICT exports, responsible for more than 40%, saw an on-year growth for the fourth consecutive month. Shipments to other nations such as Vietnam and the United States also rose, but there was a slump in exports to the European Union and Japan. Meanwhile, South Korea's ICT imports fell more than 6% to around $10 billion. 이수진, Arirang News.
Korea's southern province of Jeollanam-do is set to become a cultural center with tangible investments in tourism as well. The plan was shared by President Yoon Suk-yeol during his 20th policy briefing open to the public on this Thursday afternoon. He spoke of increasing accessibility to the province by building a Korean version of Germany's Autobahn highway system and of boosting regional travel and other related infrastructure with a pledge of 1.3 trillion won. He also made note of the cultural city status of Suncheon as well as that of Jindo County, raising prospects of a K-content hub in the province. Chinese tech giant Alibaba Group will invest $1.1 billion in South Korea over the next 3 years as part of broader business expansion. The investment includes $200 million on building a logistics center and $100 million on assisting small and mid-sized Korean firms sell their products overseas. The tech giant will also allocate some $76 million to ensure consumer protection here in South Korea amid a series of complaints against its e-commerce platform, AliExpress. The European Parliament has become the first worldwide to endorse a comprehensive act targeting artificial intelligence to allow for productive and sustainable innovations while safeguarding public interests. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
The European Union has taken a groundbreaking step by officially passing the Artificial Intelligence Act, setting a new global benchmark in AI regulation. The European Parliament on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of the act, with 523 votes for, 46 against, and 49 abstentions. The pioneering act aims to ensure transparency and minimize the risks of AI use. The EU began drafting AI regulations in 2018, and the first draft was released in 2021. Since then, the EU has faced hurdles, including concerns over potential competitive disadvantages facing European companies. Nevertheless, a consensus was reached in December last year, recognizing the critical need to curb the risks of AI abuse by tech firms. With the approval, the Parliament said that the law has created a global standard in AI governance.
The first regulation in the world that is putting a clear path towards a safe and human-centric development of AI.
Set to go into effect by the end of the year, the law categorizes the application of AI into 4 risk levels: minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. The use of AI in areas deemed to pose minimal risks, such as search engines, will not be subject to regulation. On the other hand, where there are limited risks, such as with chatbots, specific transparency obligations will need to be met. Technology related to healthcare and education, such as robot-assisted surgery, falls into the high-risk category. In these cases, government approval must be secured before development, and human oversight must be ensured during use. Unacceptable use of AI due to extreme risk, including public-facing biometric systems and predictive policing, will be banned. However, there will be exceptions for law enforcement in cases such as searching for a missing person or preventing a terrorist attack subject to prior to court approval. Violators face steep penalties, including fines of up to almost $40 billion or up to 7% of their global annual turnover. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
In the U.S., lawmakers across the aisle came together at the House of Representatives to vote in favor of a bill to ban TikTok, which they claim challenges American security interests. Yet despite their claims, the bill faces an uncertain future at the Senate. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
With overwhelming support, the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted 352 to 65 in favor of passing a bill that would ultimately ban the use of a popular video sharing platform, TikTok. American lawmakers have been calling for a ban on the platform, arguing that it poses a national security threat due to the fact that it's run by Chinese-based parent company ByteDance, and the Chinese government could use information gathered through the platform to its advantage. Wisconsin Republican Representative Mike Gallagher, who is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, stressed before the vote that the bill forces TikTok to break up the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party.
If the bill is passed by the Senate and goes into effect, ByteDance must sell TikTok's U.S. business rights within 6 months. If the sale fails, Google Play, Apple App Store, and other app platforms will be banned from providing TikTok for download. The bipartisan vote by the House comes despite former President Donald Trump's opposition to banning the popular app. Trump had argued that banning TikTok would lead to the growth of Facebook, which he criticized as an enemy of the people. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a briefing on board Air Force One on Wednesday that the top office is pleased to see progress on the bill. She added that the legislation is important as the U.S. continues to address threats posed by foreign technology services that put U.S. national security and the personal information of Americans at risk. The press secretary further emphasized that the White House wants to make sure the bill is on the strongest legal footing possible. However, it remains to be seen whether the bill can be passed with as much support in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been non-committal about bringing it to the floor for a vote, while other lawmakers vow to oppose the passage of the bill. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Seoul and Tokyo are poised to celebrate 60 years of diplomatic relations next year, and the Yoon administration is reportedly hoping to share a new statement of future-oriented partnership to mark the occasion. Addressing members of the Japanese media on Monday, a senior presidential official added hopes of consultation with Tokyo to build on the 1998 South Korea-Japan joint declaration adopted by former President Kim Dae-jung and then Japanese Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi, who acknowledged and apologized for the sufferings of Koreans during Japanese colonial rule. The official asserted that the time had come for a fresh declaration to better address the new challenges faced by both countries in light of the recent changes in the global security arena. South Korea's latest defense drill with the U.S. ends on this Thursday. And that being said, earlier on Wednesday, Seoul's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik was on site, stressing on the importance of quick elimination of the enemy's leadership should Pyongyang wage war. Our correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea's special forces have been taking part in the Seoul-Washington Freedom Shield exercise since last Friday. Forces from the two sides have mastered advanced combat techniques like infiltrating key enemy facilities. South Korea's defense chief Shin Won-sik inspected the Army Special Warfare Command on Wednesday and stressed that the special forces must become the world's strongest with the ability to quickly eliminate the enemy's leadership if Kim Jong-un starts a war. Shin inspected another site of the Freedom Shield exercise, the United States Forces Korea's military bunker complex, CP Tango. This is where the ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command directs the ground, sea, and air operations in times of emergency. The defense chief vowed efforts to promptly neutralize North Korean nuclear and missile threats. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, South Korea's Air Force conducted air interdiction drills. The training was aimed at improving pilot skill in responding to various threats, including high-speed infiltration by enemy fighter jets, surface-to-air provocations, as well as cruise missile launches. Around 20 fighter jets and reconnaissance aircraft, including the F-35A, F-15K, and KF-16, took part.
Training in the air is more tense than when on the ground because we must always be prepared against the enemy's surface-to-air and air-to-air threats, and constantly check fuel consumption status. We are training with all our hearts so that we can protect our troops and our people from enemy attacks in a time of emergency.
South Korea and the U.S. began their annual Freedom Shield exercise on March 4th to bolster defense capabilities against evolving North Korean nuclear and missile threats. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Moscow claims it's in close consultation, that is, with Seoul over the arrest of a South Korean national earlier this year on charges of espionage. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova on Wednesday announced that Moscow is considering consular counsel for the arrested Korean man surnamed Paek. Prior to this announcement, South Korea's ambassador to Russia, Lee Do-hun, met with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko to request cooperation to ensure Paek's rights and safety. Also in Russia, the country's presidential election begins tomorrow, that is March 15th, and incumbent Vladimir Putin is widely expected to extend his term in office, our Yoon reports.
Russia will be holding its 2024 presidential election from March 15th to the 17th, with an all-but-certain outcome. That is incumbent President Vladimir Putin sweeping another 6-year term. Putin has already continuously been either president or prime minister since 1999, serving as president from 2000 to 2008 and from 2012 to the present day. That's longer than any Russian leader since Joseph Stalin, who ruled the Soviet Union for nearly 29 years from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. The 1993 Russian Constitution, based loosely on France's 1958 Constitution, originally specified that a president could only serve 2 terms of 4 years if served back-to-back. But amendments in 2008 extended the presidential term to 6 years, to which amendments were then made in 2020 that formally reset Putin's own presidential term tally to 0 from 2024, potentially allowing him to remain in power until 2036. There are 102.3 million people in Russia with a right to vote in the election. Another 1.9 million people abroad have the right to vote. With the war in Ukraine grinding through its 3rd year, voting will also take place in parts of Ukraine that are now being controlled by Russian forces, areas that Russia calls its new territories, which have been placed under Russian law. For this year's election, Putin has 3 opponents: communist politician Nikolai Kharitonov, Leonid Slutsky, leader of the Nationalist Liberal Democratic Party, and Vladislav Davankov of the New People Party, who all publicly support Putin's policies. Candidates who stood against the war have been barred from running. Since Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin as acting president on the last day of 1999, Putin has won over 50% of the votes in 4 presidential elections. 53% in 2000, 71.3% in 2004, 63.6% in 2021, and 76.7% in 2018. According to a Russian non-governmental organization, even with the ongoing war, opinion polls at home show Putin's approval ratings at 85%, which is higher than before the war started in Ukraine. Kremlin officials say Putin's overwhelming support comes from people not wanting to be lectured by the West about democracy. Meanwhile, Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, has called for a massive election day protest against Putin. Navalny, in one of his last public messages, had urged people to protest against Putin by forming large crowds in overwhelming polling stations at noon on March 17th. His widow is taking up her husband's call. The winner of this election will be inaugurated in May. Yoon, Arirang News.
In other news, SpaceX is scheduled to make a 3rd attempt at launching its Starship rocket on Thursday local time from its Texas launch site. Now, following final approval from the Federal Aviation Administration on Wednesday, the rocket will be launched sometime within a 110-minute window, starting 7 a.m. Central Time. SpaceX, who says the spacecraft is the world's most powerful launch vehicle, will live stream the event on its website.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Gaza, an Israeli airstrike on a UNRWA food distribution center in Rafah on Wednesday killed 5 and left over 20 injured. On Wednesday evening, the Israel Defense Forces released a statement saying its aircraft precisely targeted and eliminated a terrorist in Hamas's operations unit in the area of Rafah, Mohammed Abu Hasna. The IDF statement failed to mention the UNRWA facility. A man with Hasna's name was on the Gaza Health Authority's list of the 5 deaths. UNRWA said that a member of their staff was also among those killed. It stated that since the war began, at least 165 of its employees in Gaza have been killed, with more than 150 facilities hit by airstrikes. UNRWA Chief Felipe Lazzarini said that attacks on their centers and facilities had become commonplace in blatant disregard to international humanitarian law. In China, a deadly blast at a restaurant in the country's northern Hebei province on Wednesday killed at least 2 people and injured 26 others. According to reports, a gas leak is suspected to have caused the explosion. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV said the explosion occurred at around 8 a.m. local time in a fried chicken shop in the town of Yanjiao, some 80 kilometers from Beijing. The explosion damaged nearby buildings, shattering windows and scattering debris. Local authorities said the fire had been brought under control, adding that additional casualties may be found once the rubble is cleared. In Japan on Wednesday, local time, a space rocket exploded shortly after launch. Japan's Space One Kairos rocket exploded only seconds after lifting off near the launch pad on the Kii Peninsula in western Japan. Space One had been attempting to be the first private Japanese company to launch a satellite into orbit. The company's president, Masakazu Toyoda, said that the 18-meter, 4-stage solid-fuel rocket was terminated after control judged the achievement of its mission would be difficult, while no comment was made on what triggered the self-destruction. The rocket carried a payload of an experimental government satellite, which could be used as a temporary backup when operational intelligence satellites fall offline. In Thailand's ancient city of Ayutthaya, around 70 elephants were treated to a special fruit feast on Wednesday to celebrate National Elephant Day. Buddhist monks performed the traditional ceremonies and rituals at the event. Thailand's National Elephant Day began in 1998 by wildlife conservationists to emphasize the importance of the connection to the animal and encourage anti-poaching efforts. According to the Thai Wildlife and Plant Conservation Department, there are about 3,800 domesticated elephants in sanctuaries across Thailand. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had fine early spring weather yesterday under bright skies despite that strong wind. It's warmer this afternoon and the warming trend will hit its peak on Saturday, topping out at 17 degrees Celsius here in the capital. But those of us in the central regions in Gyeongsang-do need to pay the price for the early warmth. Ultrafine dust levels will be high all day, but the rest of the country should have decent air quality today, so take advantage of the nice weather today if you can. It will get worse tomorrow in more places. Checking on today's highs now, most parts are having highs going up 1 to 4 degrees. Higher this afternoon, feeling more like early April. Seoul gets up to 15 degrees, Busan topping out at 17 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Sunny skies are expected for most parts, while it's getting dry in East Coast regions. Looking ahead, rain is in the forecast on Jeju from Saturday, and it will rain in most of the southern regions on Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that ends our Thursday afternoon newscast. Coming up next is our daily panel session, and today we speak with a mathematician who says to be good in math, one needs to have a good character. See you soon.